Alright, so now that we have the male eyes, now let's get started on the girls, which will be quite fun. So once again, I'm going to just start with drawing our basic eye on the face first, and then I'm going to be drawing different types of eyes later on under the page. So let's go ahead and just zoom in just a little bit. And let's just get started. So also don't mind my computer fan running because I'm rendering my videos, but anyways. When it comes to girls' eyes, typically they're a lot larger just because they look cuter. Now, I have a very cute looking face here, so very, very round, kind of more short. If you were to make a more adult or more serious character, you would make her face a lot longer, and I can always explain that kind of thing as well, like different face shapes and when to use it. Actually, I think I will go ahead and add that later, but let me just write that on a note, on a separate little thing here. Different face shapes and when to use it. Okay. Anyways, so when it comes to this type of face, the best kind of eyes would either be slanted eyes, like the flirty eyes that I mentioned earlier, or the cute eyes. Of course, any kind of eyes would work on this. It would just have to look a little bit bigger. So why don't I just go ahead and just draw our average, nice, cutesy eye here. So anyways, I always like to start pretty high, because when it comes to making girl eyes, I like to have them pretty big and have enough room to make sure that I have all the room that I want for making a round eye. So I like to start a little bit above the eye line, and then I like to curve way down. And then as you saw earlier, I like to make my front or my eyes a lot thicker for the girls, because that kind of shows like, a lot of eyeliner and the rest. Another way you can do it, to put it on the other side, is to just kind of start both at the same time, but because I didn't do that, let me go ahead and just make our lines on the same page here. So I'm gonna make the eyes about up to here, making sure that it is not below the nose or too high above the nose. I want to make sure that it ends at a good spot between where this ends and just a little bit at the bottom here. I just do that because it looks better that way, but also make sure that you have the distance between the eyes pretty set. So usually the golden rule is that the eyes are about one eye apart. Now, because this eye is quite big, I would have to make it just a little bit smaller, but we'll see how big that goes. So approximately about one eye. So that's about here. I would start it right about here. So it looks pretty accurate and it looks pretty good. So let's just keep on rolling with it. So when it comes to the other eye, once again, I just like to make sure that when I'm drawing the other eye, I make it, pretty light, just to make sure that I'm, making it look similar. So I make sure that the shape looks similar, and where it tapers looks similar, where it rounds out, where it ends, etc. So far this looks pretty good. Now I'm going to start darkening it. If you're still not confident about your eye shapes and how it is, just keep fixing them until you get it right. And sometimes just move on. Your drawing doesn't have to look perfect, because my eyes did not look perfect at all whenever I drew when I was a kid, and just when I was beginning. A lot of the times my eyes always looked asymmetrical, but the more you do it and the more you get used to drawing eyes, the better you will be. So a lot of it just takes time, and I'm just showing you guys a method on what you guys could use that I used a lot to make sure that I can get my eyes right just on the get-go. So if it doesn't look like, even like this, don't worry about it, because that takes time. A lot of it just takes a lot of mileage and a lot of drawing anyway. So now I'm going to add the eyelids, which are just a little bit above the eye itself. And I like to make it thick on the top and then thin as it gets closer to the bottom. For the eyebrows, since this actually looks a little bit too low, I just make them a bit higher. And when it comes to eyes, especially your expressions, if you're making normal eyebrows, make them more straight or make them more curled upward. If you're going to make a happy face, I'm making them more curled outward or upward than super straight. And of course, the appeal of girls' eyes are the eyelashes as well. So I don't like to make them all the same size. I like to make them kind of short at the beginning and then long on the middle. And of course I have to, make sure that they're pretty even. And then the third one can be close to the edge here. And that can be also a little bit shorter. So I like to do that. For the eyes, because she has a round look, I like to make her eyes more open by leaving a little bit of breathing room up at the top. And like to end it just before the nose, because that feels more appropriate, size-wise. If you make them like too long, they start looking uncanny. I think the only style that pulls it off is the Pokemon style. They have like eyes as long as up to their nose, and I think that's just a stylistic choice that they end up pulling it off anyway. But for the normal circumstance, I would usually put it before the nose. And for the eyes, or the highlights and everything, I like to make their eyes a little bit more glittery, just as a preference. So I like to add multiple highlights. I wouldn't go full ballistic on it, just maybe like 2 or 3 more highlights would be good. And then I like to darken the areas, of course, on the top. And as I get down to the bottom, I like to also add little lines at the bottom here, just to kind of show some nice texture. Notice how it's just very, very simple as well. It's not very complicated. It just takes a long time to get good at and get used to drawing it. So that is our female eye. Let's add some bottom eyelashes down here. We don't want to add too much, so just 1 or 2 is enough. And there we have the girl eyes. So now I will go ahead and draw multiple kinds of eyes down below. Hey everyone. Well, actually, no, sorry, this is a continuation of the video. Oops. Anyways, now I'm going to be starting on female eyes. Same thing, similar to these little themes here. So let's just get started. So let's go with our, let me just write these down. Serious, cute, gloomy, flirty. Serious, cute, gloomy, flirty. Okay. Serious, cute, gloomy, and flirty. Whoops, that was a little bit too close because I need some room to draw the other eyes. So these eyes are relatively, depending on the character that you're doing, can change a bunch in terms of size. But I'm just going to be doing one that fits the girl up here. So these will be a little bit bigger. So anyways, let's just get started. So when it comes to serious eyes, as I mentioned before, they're a little bit sharp. And they're just more for like, I guess some good examples of serious anime eyes are anime eyes like Annie from Attack on Titan, Mikasa as well. Let me think of other ones. Erina from Food Wars is good. Tamari from Naruto is pretty good. They all have, kind of slanted, more boyish eyes. Let me go ahead and zoom in so I can draw it pretty neatly. So usually these kind of eyes would have a bit of roundness, but have a sharp point to it. So similar to the guy, they have a sharp point. They kind of look a bit chic. So I would, of course, fray out from the front, make it a little bit thick. And as for the edge here, I sharpen and then thicken around the end of the edge here. And then, of course, I add in my eyelid. Generally, these eyes are also more like sharp, I would say. So I'm going to make the eyeball just a little bit sharper. And then for the end here, I make it sharp as well. So that's one type that you usually see in anime. Let me just go ahead and just draw the eyelid. Sorry, not the eyelid, the highlight and the eyes. Then there's a kind of sexy type of serious look here. So it's definitely not as round as this one is, but it's definitely a lot more like queen-like. So in this case, I would, slim it down. This is for more serious characters that are more mature. So I would make it more slanted. And just narrower. So similar to the guys, but more feminine. I would add more eyelashes. Oh, I forgot to add the eyelashes at the top here. 1 eyelash, 2 eyelashes. I like to add 2 or an even number or odd number like 3, just because it looks kind of neat. So anyways, so these these kinds of eyes are typically for more like mature characters that are very like down to earth. Black Lagoon is a good one. Who else has these kind of eyes? There's not a lot I can name right off the top of my head, but you guys kind of get the gist of it. Gist, whatever. And their eyes would probably look a lot thinner as well. And I would make their pupils a lot thinner rather than very, very round, just to give it that sharper effect. And just to add some more effect, I usually like to add some eyeshadow or just darkening around the eyelids. So darken around the middle point, and not the middle, darken around the sides, and then leaving the middle more open like that. So it gives it that nice like, ooh, like demonic, or not demonic, that's kind of not demonic, but just more like, oh, like succubus feel, or more like a, oh, like a femme fatale feel. That's a better word for it. And I also like to add some shading down on the edge of the eye as well, just to kind of emphasize that emotion more. So some serious eyes look like that as well. And it gives it a really nice kind of, really fancy and more like, I don't care what you think of me kind of feel. So here's a cutesy kind of serious, and here's a more very serious, like very down to earth feel. Now cutesy, of course I did a cutesy one up there. So I'm just going to do it again. I'm going to make sure that her eyes are pretty round. Round at the top, upward, and then circle downward as well. So this is more round, more circular rather than oval as the guy is. So this is definitely has more roundness to it than the guy does. So 1 eyelash, 2nd eyelash, which is a little bit longer, and then 3rd eyelash, which is short and kind of tapers at the end. Let me go ahead and move this to the other side. And then when it comes to eyelash, or not eyelash, the eyelid, I like to thicken up at the front and then go thinner as it reaches, just because I like the dynamic look of it. I like the kind of thick to thin feel. And of course, we have our eye having a little bit of open feeling. So notice how when it comes to the serious ones, I make the eyelids just a little bit like more up towards the eyelid here. And that's because it's supposed to give a more slanted look rather than a very open look. Of course, there's when it comes to a slanted eye like this, if you make her look down, that looks very condescending. So that's for more like a queen-like character that is like very menacing, and she's like, oh, you think you're all this and that? Well, watch me, kind of feel. So yeah, and then here we have our highlight, and I like to add multiple kinds of highlights for this kind of eye just because it's cuter. So I like to usually add like 3, and then the rest is history. So I always shade up at the top because it casts a shadow, and generally it also has it kind of has a gradient, which I really like. Now this changes depending on what kind of style you have. I'm just going for a more general kind of look. And then with the other kind of cute style, let me think. Usually this is our very basic kind. Maybe there's another kind that is more like straight. So there's another type where it's more like thick at the top, not exactly too round or too cute. Oh, I think yeah, this is more of like a gloomy cute. So think of Kana from Kobayashi Dragon Maid. She has like very sleepy looking eyes, and she has very, very big eyes as well. That kind of this is obviously not her eye, but it has a very like a very innocent but childish look. Childish but sleepy look. So this will once again have a cast shadow on the top, and then as it gets lower, spread it out a little bit. So this is another kind of cute, which is more straight. And then for the bottom part, I don't really like to emphasize it too much, so I just draw a simple line. So sometimes it doesn't have to be all too complicated. It just has to be, I would say, keep the eyeball and the opening shape more interesting than the bottom. Because if you make the bottom too interesting, then your eye will catch to this part rather than up here. Alright, so now we have our cute. Now we can have our gloomy, which is a kind of yandere. No, not really yandere look. It's just more sleepy looking and more like if Billie Eilish was a anime character, that would be a gloomy kind of eye. Sleepy, half awake, kind of like dead as well. So in this case, I would have their eyes just more once again, if this is a cutesy character, I would have it, quite thick on the top. And then tapered at the end. Of course, we have our eyelid, and then we have our eyelashes. We have our eyeball. So notice that when I'm doing the eyeballs here, especially for the younger kind of characters, I fill out the eyeball more. And that's because it gives a more like cutesy feel than for the guys. When the guys have too big of an eyeball or eyeball ratio to whites, it looks very creepy. It looks kind of uncanny, like a doll. Usually when it comes to guys, the smaller it is, the more serious, and the bigger, just a little bit bigger, makes a big difference. For girls, you can go as big as you want. Well, actually not that big, but big enough that it has enough like wiggle room to move around in. Not too big though. So for this, if you want to add a thinner highlight, that works well. Or if you want, you can also add a more what's it called? Just a more like no highlight whatsoever. And notice how when I'm doing the eyeball in this case, I'm kind of just like hatching here. Like they almost look kind of like watery. And that kind of gives a nice, like, delicate, dainty feel to it. So it doesn't always have to be a circle. It can also be just like a gradient of like a little hatching or shading. So that's one way to shade your eye as well. Let's see, another kind of gloomy eye would be good. Let's think. This is pretty common, this kind of eye, very, let me think. Oh, maybe like more of like an angry kind of eye would be really good. So I would say like keep it very thick on the top to show the mascara. Oh, a good kind of gloomy eye would be like Koizumi-san. Koizumi-san loves ramen. The main character, Koizumi, she has very like slanted eyes or kind of straight eyes that she just is like, oh yeah, I'm since she loves ramen, she's like, I'm too busy to think about you. I can just think about ramen all day instead of you, kind of feeling. So rather than this one where it's like a cute gloomy, this one's more like full on gloomy. Like her eyes are just like bruh, just kind of like almost like she doesn't want to talk to you. So in this case, I'm not going to add a highlight just to add more emphasis to that. And to kind of complete the eye, I like to go ahead and add a tapering to that. There's another girl that I don't know what she's like, or I don't know what her name is, but she was quite popular back when I was in like middle school or high school. I think she still is pretty popular. She was like this really like emo girl character in anime, and she had like really messy like hair and very, very baggy eyes, and like just I think she kind of was like an otaku. I don't exactly remember, but she looked really, really sleepy. She had like black hair, messy black hair, baggy eyes, and like just a dead look to her. And I think a lot of people liked her because they felt relatable to her. I don't know what her name is. I forgot. but I think you guys might be kind of familiar with that. So now we have the flirty one. And that is more like the sister kind of character that I was talking about. More of the older woman kind of feel. So girls like Lisa from Genshin Impact, girls like Shinobu from Demon Slayer, those kind of eyes. Those eyes are very, very popular. This is more like a mix between cute and gloomy, but more serious. You know, it's kind of a mix of all these things. And to make these eyes, we can go ahead and just do the same thing as the other ones. So when it comes to making these eyes, let me see if I have enough room to show it in a straight manner. Okay, these kind of eyes have a very like high start, and then it gets lower and lower until it starts drooping, like they have like hooded eyes or something, and that gives a very seductive kind of feel. So let me go ahead and move this so you guys can see it more. Generally, the eyelashes will also be pretty out there. And these kind of eyes like to be pretty filled up. So I wouldn't really put a lot of like any breathing room for this one because she's so like this kind of eye is so seductive that they have to kind of like half close their eyes to look very seductive. And this kind of eye is very popular. I can guess why, but I can't say it. Anyways, these kind of eyes, if you close them more, they become more like, ooh, like just sexy kind of feel. You know, the ara kind of feel. I don't want to say it like in an accent because I feel embarrassed. I already did that in my last course, and if you guys saw that, you know, I'm sorry. Anyways, so this kind of eye, it's just very, very, like, she's like, oh, like, you're so cute, like, to the guy. And she's like, oh, you're so cute, I just want to eat you up, or something, whatever kind of feeling. And so I kind of created this, like, I like to give a more of, like, a heightened look to the bottom part of the eye, just to give it that effect. Here's a more sexy kind of version, so similar to the gloomy ones, but more like, just more sexy, so more droopy as well, but more straight in this case. But it kind of has a wave to it, so you want to have a wave. You want to start high, then droop down a little bit, and then go high again. And because she's kind of looking like, you know, half hooded, asleep kind of feel. You want to give that kind of feel like that she is, she's like looking at you in like a very seductive way, I should say. So most of the time, these kind of eyes will look up towards you. And I would actually make her eye even more like half asleep, just to give it that sexy effect. If you want, you can even add a heart eye to this, or heart-like shape to the pupils. And if you want to add a little bit of a eyebrow to it, you know, kind of more of like a, not angry, but more relaxed look. And then add some eyelashes at the bottom to kind of just simulate the makeup look. Anyways, these are multiple types of girl eyes. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.